Hello everybody, this is the iFan channel here, and today's video is going to be one of my most ambitious videos yet because I'm actually going to download every single version of Windows from Windows 1 all the way to Windows 10, including Windows Server iterations, Windows NT, as well as everything in between. However, to streamline the video, I'm actually not going to include Windows Beta versions such as Windows Whistler or Windows Longhorn or any such OS like these two. So without further ado, why not let's start the video. Okay guys, I'm currently on my PC now, and as you can see, due to the fact I do have 350 gigs of storage remaining, therefore I'm actually going to start with these operating systems, and then later I'm going to install Windows 11 as well as Windows Server 2003, 2008, 2008 R2, 2012, and so on and so forth. So why not, I'm going to start with Windows 1.0, and let me explain some of the OSs I actually omitted. I basically omitted OSs such as Windows Whistler and Windows Longhorn, as well as individual service packs like Windows XP Service Pack 1, Service Pack 2, etc, etc, as well as different editions of Windows, like say Windows Vista Home Basic, Windows Vista Home, or Windows Vista Pro. So basically it's only Windows 1.0, Windows 2.0, Windows 3.0, Windows 3.1, Windows 95, 98, 2000 ME, XP, Vista 7, 8, 8.1, and 10. So why not? I'm actually going to start with Windows 1.0. So due to the fact I actually did download all the floppy disks as well as drives, why not? I'm actually going to start the machine. So at first, you're actually going to be greeted to, I believe, MS-DOS. As you can see, this is MS-DOS 5, which was released after 1985. I think it was released during the 90s, but I just have to double check. So basically, I'm actually going to enter. Okay, so basically it does ask for this too. So why not? I'm actually going to minimize this. It does take some space, and why not? I'm actually going to change the floppy disk. This too. Okay. And this 3, and here you go guys, this is MS-DOS 5. It does tell me to turn off the floppy disk, so why not? I'm actually going to remove the floppy disk. Actually disconnect it, why not? Okay, then go to Shift F9. And I'm actually going to add another floppy disk, which does says Windows 1.0, which is essentially an MS-DOS application used to enhance MS-DOS 5.0. Basically, here is Windows 1.0. I'm actually going to go to the setup, and here it is. Okay, so I'm now currently on the Windows 1.0 setup. Why not? Let's press continue. And Windows, yep. Continue. Let's use IBM keyboard and no pointing device. You could actually have a mouse because Windows 1.0 does add mouse functionality, unlike with MS-DOS. IBM. They do need to build this now, so I think that is this too. Utilities disk. I don't have a printer or anything, and many of the printers during the 80s are currently obsolete. So basically I'm just going to omit it. Font. Desktop applications. The right program. which I do think is essentially the same as either Notepad or WordPad in today's world. And of course Win. And here you go. Yes, this is what Windows 1.0 looks like. I'm sorry, I just don't have a very good representation of the UI, unfortunately, and it does look like this for some reason. I just don't know. But this is what Windows 1.0 looked like, according to me, unfortunately. But some of the new things Windows 1.0 did bring is it introduced multitasking. It did introduce the use of the mouse, but I could not figure out how to do so. And various built-in programs, and runs on MS-DOS as a 16-bit shell program known as MS-DOS Executive, which enhance MS-DOS usage. So why not? I'm actually going to shut down the guest and actually going to start Windows 2.0, which is another iteration. It was released 2 years later in 1987, and Windows 2.0 adds the ability to overlap and resize application windows, and it also added desktop icons, keyboard shortcuts, and support for 16-color VGA graphics. So why not? I'm actually going to start Windows 2.0 to see what it is all about. So also I'm actually going to download MS-DOS 5.0. Basically, iterations of Windows 2.0 were released between 1988 and 1989. Kind of like the fact Windows 1.0 was released between 1985 and 1986. There's actually several different versions of 2.0, including 2.0, 2.01, and 2.1. And this too, why not? And then this 3. They'll tell you to disconnect all the floppy disks there. So why not? I'm actually going to go in here and go to settings there, and then disconnect. And afterwards go to Shift F9 once again. I'm actually going to connect now. So basically connected, power on. And I'm actually going to switch to Windows 2.0, which is another application. This is Windows 2.03 here. So A, which is the floppy drive, and then setup. So I'm actually going to enter the Okay, so in fact they actually tell you to put the displays this on, which I do believe is this 2. And the fonts this, which is actually this 3, I believe so. Oh jeez, is it this 4? I don't know. Okay, and now is this 5, the very last disk. And I'm not sure if Windows 2.0 looked as ugly as like 1.0 though, but I'm actually going to finish, why not? And here you go, it does look a lot more refined. Unfortunately, it is monochrome, but you do have a mouse, so I'm basically going to use the write.exe. And why not? I'm actually going to not save, but just exit. And then I'm actually going to shut down. As you can see, Windows 2.0 is still called MS-DOS Executive, just like Windows 1.0. And 3.0 is when Windows did get critical acclaim. It was released in 1990 and it improved multitasking. It added a new GUI which resembles Windows 3.1, where apps are represented by icons rather than a list of file names, as you can see from the previous OSs. And it also added multimedia support and support for CD-ROM. So why not, I'm actually going to install, and similar to the other two OSs, I'm actually going to install MS-DOS 5 first. And this is going to be the very last OS where I'm actually going to use MS-DOS 5, because in 3.1 I'm going to use MS-DOS 6.22. So basically I'm actually going to disconnect it and then restart. And here you go, my last look at MS-DOS 5. Oh, I forgot to connect it. Okay, so A. And as you can see, rather than have all black and white, there is actually a blue screen for setup, kind of like Windows XP, as well as Windows 2000 and Windows 9X. So basically just continue. And here you go. They do require this too. So why not, I'm actually going to search for this too. But it does look a lot more refined than the Windows 2.0 and 1.0 setup, as Windows 2.0 and 1.0 is essentially just a black and white screen, whilst here there's actually a real GUI to set up Windows 3.0. But they do require this 3 for some reason, so why not, I'm actually going to get this 3. Unfortunately, this Windows does not have the iconic Windows 90s logo. In fact, there's only, like, I think a different Windows logo than Windows 3.1, but in Windows 3.1 it does introduce the new Windows logo, which is quite ancient but still recognizable with other Windows 9X as well as Windows 2000 OSs. I'm actually not gonna download a printer. And basically this is what Windows 3.0 looked like. As you can see with the new UI, and it does have games such as Reverse C, which was included in Windows 2.0 and 1.0. And if you were to close the app and go to accessories, as you can see, there are actually some new apps. So why not, I'm actually going to close this and then end the Windows session and then install Windows 3.1, which will be MS-DOS 6.22 rather than MS-DOS 5. So basically here is Windows 3.1, and let me tell you guys when MS-DOS 5.0 was released. It was actually released in 1991. So basically before 3.1, which was released in 1992, with several different variants being released in 1993 and 1994. In fact, in China, they actually have Windows 3.2 rather than Windows 3.1, and Windows 3.11 is the first workgroups dedicated OS. And Windows 3.1 introduced many features such as screensavers, Windows Media Player, and it has a startup sound, a Windows logo, as well as support for internet browsers later in its run. So basically Windows 3.1 could run all the way up to Internet Explorer 5.0, which is quite a modern browser relative to like the original internet, but Internet Explorer 5 was actually released in the late 90s. So over here is MS-DOS 6.22. I'm actually going to set this up first before installing Windows 3.1. Unfortunately, I could not find a way to actually remove that sound. I know it could be very annoying. But here you go, guys. MS-DOS setup is complete. When I'm actually going to restart MS-DOS, I'm actually going to add in the 3.1 floppy drive. And here you go. Why not? I'm just going to do express setup. Okay. I'm not going to set up a username. I'm just going to put in whatever I want here. But as you can see, the setup is still similar to Windows 3.0. A bit still. But let me show you guys the Windows 3.0 logo, which is nothing like Windows 3.1 or 9X. As you can see, this is what the 3.0 logo is. It is very primitive. But right now I'm actually going to add this for. Now, as you can see, many of these OSs do have quite simple setup still compared with Windows 95, which would have a product key and which would take a lot longer to install. But here you go. I'm actually going to reboot this. I'm actually going to disconnect the floppy drive and go into Win here instead of Windows/Win. And as you can see, that's the Windows 3.1. And I'm actually going to show you guys the about. Why not? This is basically akin to VMware. And this does run 3.1. And I'm actually going to shut down. But as you can see, there's some new applications and stuff. It does look like 3.0 in terms of its UI. So why not? I'm actually going to close and then shut down. And then run NT 3.1. Unfortunately, I just don't understand why there's actually 4 gigs, but I'm actually going to fix this. So I'm actually going to see you guys soon. So unfortunately, the ISOs are quite dumpster, so why not? I'm actually going to add a floppy disk. Yes, I'm not joking, a floppy disk. I'm actually going to browse for Windows NT 3.1. Virtual machine disk, and here it is. Basically first released in 1993, so a bit more than 30 years ago. And Windows NT 3.1 is actually dubbed as new technology, as it began as a rewrite of OS 2, which was jointly developed by Microsoft as well as IBM before they split in the early 90s. And it was the first 32-bit OS and the first Windows OS that is not run under MS-DOS. So why not? I'm actually going to select OK and then power on the virtual machine. But first, I'm not going to minimize the Camtasia. And here you go. Yeah, it does look a lot nicer than just choosing the ISO, which I do think is quite dumpster, unfortunately. I don't really think it matters, but NTFS is the newer file standard, but many Macs do still use exFAT and stuff, as well as Mac OS Enhanced. But as you can see, setup is formatting. WinNT. Yeah, I know it does require so many different floppy drives. That's like more than 20. Can be quite numb to do this. So why not, I'm actually going to fast forward this a bit. Okay guys, it is now enough for me to actually continue this because it did take a while. Actually save you guys a minute because there were so many floppy drives. And here you go. Unfortunately you do have to remove the disk. So basically I'm gonna put on settings and then connect it and then throw out delete. And I just don't know what happened. There's actually a blue screen of death was installing Windows NT. So why not, I'm actually going to consult to myself. Okay guys, now I figured out the problem and I'm actually going to show you guys how to implement it. Unfortunately there is some issue with the setup. I'm actually going to figure out what to do next, but I did finally get into setup. So basically in the settings you do have to have a IDE hard disk, and then on advanced actually select IDE 0:0, and here you go. Unfortunately I do not know what happened at this point. Basically it did take me several minutes to actually work around this issue. Unfortunately, if I do select Windows NT on VMware, that processor is way too high for NT 3.1. So I basically chose Windows 3.1 instead and actually formatted with NTFS rather than FAT. So why not, I'm actually going to name it Windows again, just like on Windows 3.0 and Windows 3.1. And voila, there are. Basically it did take some time. One, I'm actually just going to set up a random network. So basically I do have to connect the floppy drive again. I know it will take some time, but hear me out there. I might stop the video for a while if this were to take too long. And basically now I'm near my last floppy drive, so why not, I'm actually going to add the 2 last floppy disk over here, and then I do believe I'll finish setup by then. And here's the very last floppy disk. Now it does ask to configure a network, but unfortunately it does fail to start, so why not I just do a work group here, and this is what the home screen would look like, I believe so. Okay, basically I'm not going to add in a password. Basically this is New York time, of course, not Greenwich time. So here you go. And this is Windows NT 3.1. I'm actually going to remove the floppy drive. And yes, this is NT 3.1. Basically the NT version of 3.1. And here you go. It does take a while, but I'm not sure if it actually loads or not. I'm actually going to wait a minute. Unfortunately, for some reason, I could not get it to the UI. I'm actually going to figure out how to do it. But why not? I'm actually going to restart the device. and see if it works this time around. Oh, Jesus. Oh, my goodness. I don't know what I did. But why not? I'm actually going to disconnect this because it's so annoying to include this all the time. And here's the fix. But I'm not sure why the UI just does not show up there. So why not? I'm actually going to skip to 95. Now luckily after several seconds the UI did load. I was going to download Windows 95, but why not? I'm just going to show you guys the UI first. So here's Program Manager. This is basically akin to WinVer, and I'm actually going to close and basically shut down. Yes, shut down. And here it is. You could see this is a lot more modern than like Windows 3.1 and stuff, where it just shuts down to DOS. So when I'm actually going to shut down Guest and then actually move into 95. Well, disclaimer, setting up Windows 95 will be a bit complicated, but I'm actually going to show you guys all the steps to actually download Windows 95. So I basically do have, you guessed it, a boot disk for Windows 95. And why not? I'm actually going to power on. Well, Windows 95 featured a completely revamped Windows UI with a classic theme, the start button, and it's essentially the first modern Windows OS as you know it. And the layout remaining unchanged for a better part of nearly 30 years. Basically, Windows 95 does look like many modern OSs with the start button, as well as like taskbar and stuff, and icons, a home screen. So basically I'm actually going to power on the Windows 95 boot disk, and as you can see it does start Windows 95, and I'm actually going to load with CD-ROM support. So F this first, and of course select a Y, and then create a DOS partition, and then select 1 for create primary DOS partition, and of course you should press Y, and just restart Windows. Why not? I'm actually going to put in a CD drive, but I'm not sure if it really works or not, if it's really a good idea to put in a CD drive now for 95. Oh, jeez. Okay, more correct OS, yes. Windows 95 here. And then just put F disk again. Yes, yes. And here is the primary partition. So I'm actually going to escape F disk and then format C, and then press Y again. I'm still confused at this part, however, as it is quite hard, but I'm actually going to select Enter and then R. I'm actually going to pause to actually figure out what to do here. I actually tried D, but I'm not sure if it actually works. But I'm actually going to type in Dear W. As you can see, this is what the D drive looks like. And then go to C, and then mkdir win95, which is to make the directory. And then dir/w. And then this is going to be quite complicated. The As you can see, just try to copy this for a minute. Actually copy D colon slash Win95 colon star dot star, basically asterisk dot asterisk space C slash Win95, and why not? It will actually copy all the files, and then CD Win95, and then dear W. Basically, you're going inside the Windows 95 directory, and then go to D and then setup. Whew. I know it's a bit hard, but I did try. But this will take a while for sure. And when I'm actually going to pause this, I don't want to show you guys the product key because I don't want to get sued by the DMCA or anything. Okay guys, it just went past the key, and why not I'm actually going to name this computer as Windows. Yes, just like the previous OSs. I'm not sure if the network is really applicable, but I'm actually going to show you guys the full OS once it is complete. This is essentially Windows 95, which was released in, you guessed it, 1995. So basically, after waiting about a minute, I'm finally finished with this section. I'm actually going to install the most common components, and no, I don't want to start up disk. Nobody uses floppy disk these days. In fact, floppy disks were obsolete since like the early 2000s. Yeah, it's basically irrelevant in today's standards, and I'm actually going to remove the floppy disk for a bit. The boot disk. Oh, I don't know what to do with this witness protection error. So basically, I did download Fix95 CPU, the IMA, to actually fix out the protection error. I don't know what really happened. I did run through several issues like this several times. Okay, so why not? I'm actually going to remove the floppy disk. Yeah, I don't really know if it even works, but I'm actually gonna figure out soon. Okay, it finally worked. Finally. Which is quite exciting. I'm generally very worried, but it did say please insert the disk. I just think Windows 95 on VMware does not recognize any CD, so instead actually change it to C, from D to C, and hit OK, and bam. And it'll take several minutes, but I just don't know what the protection error is. It seems to be an error on Windows 95, especially on VMware and VirtualBox. But I'm gonna select it to, of course, New York time. I don't care much about printer, and yes, Windows 95 with the new UI, with Internet Explorer as well. But I don't think there's really any internet support with this specific OS. Basically, there's Internet Explorer 4.0, and yeah, things will be installed. But it does tell you to like connect with like some BS, like the LAN and stuff. Basically, dial-up. Who uses dial-up these days, anyways? But this will take a while to actually figure out. But who knows? At least this is still Windows 95. Now instead of actually installing internet, why not I show you guys the version of Windows. As you can see, Windows 95, and it does have a control panel which also includes system as well, and the display here. You could actually change a lot, but I'm actually going to ignore all of this because it does take a while. I'm actually going to shut down and go to Windows NT because it'll take like really long, too long for this video to support. And here is Windows NT 4.0. I'm sorry if it took really long to install Windows 95. There was actually some issue at first. What the hell is this? Basically, after several seconds of waiting, this is actually NT workstation setup. It's going to continue, I believe so. Continue setup though, and then page down. F8, select, and install from this using NTFS. This will take several tries, unfortunately. But oh geez, it is too big when I'm actually going to restart the machine here. Now ironically, Windows NT did complain that basically 16 gigs of storage is too much, so why not I'm actually going to try 4 gigs, and it finally worked. Well, fun facts about Windows NT 4.0, it was released in 1996. It has a similar UI to Windows 95 and is designed to work with either uniprocessor or symmetric multi-processor computers, and is business oriented. And even though it is more stable than Windows 95, it is actually less flexible and had no DirectX support. Actually, it did have limited DirectX, so therefore 3D games could not really run well on NT. But why not I'm actually going to examine the hard drives for a bit. It will take a while, so bear with me. Okay, so restart the computer, and this is Windows NT 4.0. Well, with these older Windows setups, I'm always quite nervous if anything goes wrong, because it is quite complex to install some of the older versions of Windows. But I gotta be patient here because it does take some time. And I'm not sure what is going on with this setup at this point. Finally, I'm in the Windows NT setup, which is quite good. Again, Windows on Windows. WinNT4. I'm not going to create a password, as well as an emergency disk, as it's a floppy disk. Whew. I know it did take a while. Why not? I'm not actually going to connect it to network because it's quite complicated. It does require some older networks and stuff. I'm actually going to manually set it up afterwards, and maybe install VMware tools on a future version. But as you can see, this is Windows NT here. And restart the computer for a bit. It does take a while to actually load. I'm not sure why, but this is what NT is like for some reason. And here it is. Control Alt Delete. Luckily it does not require product key. And here you go, Windows NT. Yes, basically similar to Windows 95. It does include Internet Explorer. And I'll show you guys what version it is. It is actually Internet Explorer 2. And yes, it is really old, as you can see. I just don't understand who even uses these older Internet Explorer anyways. And this is the system. So right now I'm actually going to shut down the machine because it does take a while for me to just browse around NT. And why not? Let's go to Windows 98, which was released in 1998. And it is rather tuned up to Windows 95, adding some new features such as Windows driver model, disk cleanup, Windows Update, multi-monitor support, internet connection sharing, and many more. And 98 SE, which was released in 1999, fixed a lot of bugs as well as included Internet Explorer 5.0. So why not? I'm actually going to install that. I actually did have to install VMware 14 rather than 15 or 16 for some reason, because 98 would not actually work on the modern versions of VMware. Unfortunately, there was some weird error. I'm actually going to show you guys what I mean in a bit. So yeah, I basically posted this several years ago, and as you can see, there's actually some weird error. But why not? Let's continue with the Windows 98 setup. Now this does take a while, but I'm actually going to get 98 to work. Yeah, I know it's quite difficult. Some of these older operating systems don't really have reliable setup, unfortunately. But after like 2000, I believe it'll be very easy to set up. Unlike some of the maze, which is required from the older versions of Windows, basically requires me to even customize certain settings. So yeah. And after a while, it will format drive C here. And yes, this is a newer setup compared to the other operating systems. And I really hope this works, unlike the one before. But if it does not work, I don't know what to do anyways, because nobody at VMware forums or even Reddit even responded to me, which is quite unfortunate. Basically, I already finished that copying file part, and why not? I'm actually going to put Windows and Windows once again, since I'm quite lazy at naming stuff. I do accept the agreement, and unfortunately, I do have to blur the product key, because I don't want to show the product key in case if I get sued by the DMCA or if my video gets taken down. And after finishing the product key, you're going to be greeted to this sign here. And I really hope this works, because before I did show you guys the error, unfortunately. But even though 98 could not download on VMware Workstation 16 on this machine, I actually tried on a previous laptop. Actually, my previous laptop did have an Intel Core i5 8th generation. It also ran Windows 11. But with VMware Workstation 14, Windows 98 did work for some reason. I just don't know why. So that's why I downloaded VMware Workstation 14 to basically support every single OS here. And it does take a while because of hardware detection. So I'm going to skip. Okay, I'm nearly complete with this. And after a while it would restart, which is a good sign, because before it did show the error, the shell error. Well, I tried searching all over the internet, and I don't know if it works or not, but they did set the compatibility to VMware Workstation 6.5, but even that did not work. So it's very complicated. But actually, I'm actually currently in the OS now. Oh, jeez. The same error again. I just don't know what happened there. So basically 98 is kind of busted on VMware. I'm actually going to try on VirtualBox. So basically I'm booting to safe mode now. I'm actually going to try a new way, which is actually to disable all 32-bit protected mode disk drivers. For some reason, I don't know what is happening here, but go into properties and then performance there. Basically file system and troubleshooting, and then actually apply and then close, and of course restart your VM. And I do believe that might help the issue. That's what I see Tech Adam actually did on YouTube, and voila, I really don't know what to say here. This was actually uploaded 6 months ago anyways, yeah. So way after I started like posting that around 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm actually going to set the day. Yeah, it does seem accurate except the time zone. Oh, geez. It's quite a good thing I nearly finished setup. Otherwise, I would have migrated to VirtualBox and got the same error once again. This is actually 98 SE, which was released in 1999. Basically the end of the 20th century. And after this, I'm actually going to install Windows 2000, which basically marks a quote-unquote new era of Windows. It is basically known as Microsoft's most stable OS at the time. And Windows 2000 acted as a business-oriented OS of Microsoft before Windows XP, and it included NTFS 3.0, the Active Directory, as well as basic and dynamic disk storage. And Windows 2000 was much more secure than Windows 9X based OS, and it was the last strictly business NT based OS, because Windows XP basically merged NT and DOS, basically the consumer and business side, into one OS, rather than have a separate DOS OS for consumers. And after a while, you're actually greeted into the login. I know I was rambling so much in this video because loading does take a while on this, and I might have mispronounced some words as well. And apologies for my bad grammar, because it is quite late in the night, and also basically all of these Windows OSs take a lot of time to load, unfortunately. But in a while you'll see the login screen. And here you go. Basically Windows 98 would start. Unfortunately, there is no sound on this particular virtual machine, but I'm actually going to install VMware tools and stuff, as well as a sound card, which would actually include a sound card. And here is Internet Explorer. Basically all this MSN bullshit, I just don't know, like they keep asking for a modem there. Who even uses modem these days there? And if you were to go on computer and stuff, this is what the Windows would look like. Just go on WinVer for a while. Really old. And control panel, system. Basically this is SE, which is the second edition. And why not, I'm actually going to shut down the computer. Finally. I thought I'd had to downgrade to VMware 14, but why not, I'm actually going to start installing Windows 2000 and then maybe finish up with Windows ME, and then I'm actually going to return the next day with Windows XP and stuff, because this does take a while to actually download. And it's getting really late now. Okay, after a few seconds, just select F8 and install. Install using the NTFS. After several seconds, it will show this screen which does check the C drive, and it will copy files. And yes, after this, I believe we'll be in Windows 2000 setup. Now, basically, 98 and Windows 2000 were the first two operating systems I used because I was born around the time Windows XP was released. So therefore, basically, either 98 or 2000 or XP are some of the first OSs I used. And over here is a new startup screen. Basically, 2000 and ME actually used this startup screen. ME, which stands for Millennium Edition, was actually also released in year 2000, and it was the last MS-DOS based OS. And whilst it removed DOS mode to speed up boot times, it did include Windows Movie Maker, System Restore, native zip support, Windows DVD player, and automatic updates. However, Windows ME has been lauded as a very buggy OS. Yes, it is basically one of the very worst Windows OS of all time. It is basically mired with all of the stability issues. Basically, Windows Vista did not really have any stability issues, but because Windows Vista does have more stringent system requirements, kind of like Windows 11, therefore many less powerful hardware could not really run Windows Vista well. But Windows Vista Service Pack 2 did actually improve some of the bugs and stuff. And this is actually the setup for Windows 2000, which looks a lot more modern than the other setups of prior OSs. Basically, after several minutes, this screen would show up. Again, Windows on Windows. And product key, unfortunately, I cannot show you guys. After typing the product key, here is actually the setup. I just don't know why they keep saying Pacific time, even though I basically don't live in LA or San Francisco or Seattle or something. Instead, I actually live in Cambridge, Mass. I just really don't understand. Please wait while Windows installs networking components. It does take a while. And basically just choose typical settings, why not? And it is not part of a domain. It is just a work group. And I think this is essentially the finish of the Windows 2000 setup. And here you go. Let's finish it. I'm actually going to disconnect from the CD. And basically it'll restart into Windows 2000. I know it will take a while, but after this, as you can see, Windows 2000 would actually redirect you into the login. It is actually now preparing network. I'm actually just going to select no to all of this. Really sorry, the Windows startup sound is quite shit there. Basically the volume is quite inedible, but basically it will take a while for the Windows to actually start up. I know it is quite slow. It has been for the last several OSs for some reason. But here you go, Windows 2000. Windows Update as well, and if you were to go here, it would actually show the About Windows. So Windows 2000 Service Pack 4, which is basically the very latest service pack for Windows 2000. And if you want to run, this is what the WinVer is. So basically a lot more modern. So basically just run WinVer. And as you can see, it looks a lot more modern than those Windows 9X WinVer. And right now I'm actually going to shut down Windows 2000. As you can see, this starts to be a more modern version of Windows. Basically, instead of actually returning to DOS mode or something, it actually totally shuts down this time. And this is Windows ME. So basically I do have a floppy drive, and this is the very last OS in this video to actually feature floppy drive, as Windows XP and Vista and 7 and all these later OSs would actually use, you guessed it, a CD. So PCI bus scan is complete. I'm not sure if ME really has the same issues as 98, but ME has been criticized as being one of the worst Windows operating systems of all time. Basically, ME was just released 1 year before Windows XP was released. Yes, 1 year. And it looked really ancient, whilst XP looked very modern. After a while, you enter the Windows ME setup. Basically, it does look really much like the Windows 9X setup. Basically, Windows 98, but with a few extra features, and it did remove DOS mode, unfortunately. After formatting the C drive, I do believe it will go into setup. Basically, Windows ME setup does look very similar to Windows 98 setup. As you can see over here, Windows Millennium Edition, and typical. Why not install some of the most common components, and US, and of course this will be the New York time, and this will take a while. And yes, it did finish copying files. Now I'm actually going to restart. Basically, it will take a while. I don't know, maybe boot from hard disk. As you can see, there's actually a much newer screen rather than the blue screen of Windows 98. And now I'm waiting to see if there are any plug-and-play devices I might have. And here it is. This is what the screen would look like. So basically, after about 1 or 2 minutes, this hardware detection phase would actually complete. And why not? I'm actually going to go to the next phase to see what it's all about. Again, Windows on Windows. For more simplification, I do accept the agreement, and it will say the product key here. I'm actually going to pause the video for a bit. And yeah, after finishing the product key, I've actually sort of completed with the Windows ME setup. I really don't know what this page will be. It says restart now, why not? And if this computer would have the same issues as that of 98, I'm not really sure. Basically, at around this time frame was when 98 actually failed, unfortunately, but it did fix the issue. Oh wow, it actually worked this time. So maybe it is actually a 98 issue. But I'm actually going to pause this because it will take a while. So basically, after a few minutes, I finally got ME to finish setting up. And in a moment, it will show you guys the booting screen. Yes. Basically similar to Windows 2000 and Windows XP, which is the next iteration of Windows, would have a new boot screen altogether. So stay tuned. Basically, I'm actually going to continue like this afternoon or this evening or tomorrow midnight because it's now getting really late. As you can see, it's near 4 o'clock a.m. I know it is really late, and therefore I'm actually quite confused now. So why not? I'm actually going to go to sleep after getting ME to work. Finally. I know this has been a very ambitious video, but unfortunately the microphone quality is not very good, as I did buy a microphone from Walmart, a $45 microphone. Unfortunately the AirPods Pro, even though it sounded quite okay on a Mac, as you can see in the beginning of the video, it does sound quite rubbish on a Windows, so therefore you have to buy a new microphone. And here it is, Windows ME. Known as the very worst Windows OS with a lot of stability issues as well as bugs and stuff. But here you go. Unfortunately, there's no startup sound unlike in Windows 2000. I do believe I do have to install like some form of sound, like one of these Realtek sound card and stuff. But here it is, VMware, and if you were to go on to control panel, it does show a newer control panel window. Yes, basically this will be in XP soon with even a newer control panel UI. So basically I'm looking for somewhere called System, and at least they do have all control panel options, and this is what the system looks like, Windows ME. I'm actually going to shut down the OS and go to sleep. It's getting quite late now. And I'm gonna see you guys soon. Okay guys, after a whole night of rest, I finally woke up. I've actually waken up for around several hours already. So why not? I'm actually gonna start installing Windows XP this time. Yes, Windows XP. Basically, Windows XP marked a huge change, including being the first NT-based OS for personal and business use, having a new logo as well as the new Luna theme rather than a drab classic theme, and some machines still use XP embedded to this day, including the MBTA, and Windows XP is still technically usable even to this day, due to the fact it could actually support Firefox from 6 years ago, as I'll show you guys in the very end of the video once I download basically everything, all the apps and stuff. So why not, let's continue and F8 and install. Why not install quickly? Yeah. Basically that's a new feature on Windows XP Professional. And as you can see, setup is now formatting, and it is now checking the C drive, and setup is now copying files at the moment, which would take some time, but I promise Windows XP is a lot more stable than the previous operating systems, and it has a lot more reliable setup in VMware Workstation. I do believe VMware Workstation does not really work well with older operating systems, but it does work well with newer operating systems. So Windows XP, Vista 7, 8, 8.1 and 10 will all run well. Basically Windows XP started development in around 2000, the very beginning of 2000, and it was released in the end of 2001, and many do laud Windows XP as the best OS of all time, similar to Windows 7 as well as Windows 10. So what, I'm actually going to pause this, and after a few seconds it would actually restart. And yeah, you do see a newer boot logo, as you can see over here. Yes, it does say Windows XP. And yeah, I'm now installing Windows. It will take quite a while, maybe around 10 or 20 minutes to install Windows. It does say 40 minutes, but this computer is quite powerful, and VMware does use the processing power of today's computers, unlike the processing power like the Pentium 4 and stuff, which are basically XP based processors and stuff, which are quite old. and it will install devices. Which does take a while, but at least it is much better than the previous operating systems. Instead of being a drab 2D UI, it is more of a 3D UI, as you can see over here. And after several seconds, it will show up this screen over here. I'm actually going to name it Windows on Windows once again, just like the previous operating systems. And next, and over here will show the product key. I'm actually going to blur it up. And once I finish the product key, why not I'd insert the password, but I refuse to. And basically, just like every other Windows before, Windows XP did say Pacific time. I actually live in Boston, specifically in Cambridge, so why not New York time? And select continue, and it will install the network and stuff, just typical settings and work group. Basically, if I will want to put a domain, I would have to install Windows Server first, and then join the Windows XP into that Windows Server's domain. So it would be quite cumbersome. And we're now completing installation. I'm actually going to pause for a bit. So after about a minute or two, right here is the Windows XP startup. As you can see, Windows XP did restart, and you actually see a newer setup mode here. To improve the appearance of visual elements, Windows will automatically adjust the screen resolution. So basically, nowadays, I do believe the screen resolution is now 800 by 600 rather than 640 by 480. And over here is the Windows XP startup. Just please wait. And I do think you'll go into new setup window, of which you actually create user accounts and stuff. So instead of having the old classic login, you actually now have a new login UI. You could still have the classic login, if you're in a work group or something, or if you have a domain, it'll be classic, just like the previous Windows, such as Windows 9X, Windows 2000, and Windows NT 4.0. And why not let's select next. I'm not sure, because Windows XP has been unsupported for nearly 10 years now. Not at this time. And why not? I'm actually going to name this Win XP, for more simplicity. Basically, I was born around the time Windows XP was released, and this became the first OS I basically used when I was a child, because basically, as you guys all know, you don't start remembering stuff until you're about 4 or 5 years old. So basically, this is the first OS I've become used to. So Windows XP is quite intuitive with all the new UI and stuff, the start button as well as the taskbar. And why not? I'm actually going to go to Control Panel, actually go to System Up. Instead, I'm actually going to go to Properties, which does show the background. So why not instead, here it is, Service Pack 3. And it does show the 11th gen Intel Core i5, which is basically my computer's, actually my host computer's processor. And if you were to go on VMware, it would show this, Windows XP, Service Pack 3, and this is actually Internet Explorer 6. Over here, I'm actually going to install the latest version of Internet Explorer as well as Firefox. So right now I'm actually going to shut down and actually going to install Windows Vista. Yes, Windows Vista, released more than 5 years after XP. It was actually first released to manufacturing in 2006, but it was available to the consumer in 2007. I'm actually going to install Windows Vista Ultimate this time. Well, I'm sorry if I said in the beginning of the video about Windows Vista Pro. In fact, there was actually no Windows Vista Pro. Instead, the professional line of Windows Vista is actually called Windows Vista Business. I'm actually going to install Windows Vista Ultimate. It is actually mired with several issues, namely driver issues, because most drivers have not updated for Windows Vista support yet, as well as, you guessed it, stringent hardware requirements, such as the need for at least 1 gig of RAM, I believe so, and several more. But Windows Vista did include a lot of new features such as the Arrow UI, Windows Search, as well as enhanced user account control. But because of the stringent hardware requirements, Windows Vista was heavily criticized for lacking driver support and for crashing on lower-end hardware. However, higher-end hardware is fine, and after Service Pack 2, Windows Vista finally fixed many of the bugs. However, it was quite late at the time, as Windows 7 was released just several months after Service Pack 2 was released. So basically, here's Windows Vista. It does have a similar startup to like XP, but instead, it actually has no Windows logo, and instead of being a blue, it is more like a green loading bar, kind of like Windows XP Home Edition. And here it is, Windows Vista. Instead of having that blue and white screen just like older operating systems, instead it is this. Yes, I'm not joking. I'm actually going to select it to English and accept the service. Okay, 40 gigs unallocated space. And I'm actually going to pause this for a bit because it will take a while. Basically, after about 3 or 4 minutes, Windows Vista would finally restart. Why not? I'm actually going to select restart now. And as you can see, Windows Vista did include yet another new UI, because it was released a bit more than 5 years after Windows XP. So therefore, there was actually new UI, and the distance between Windows XP and Windows Vista is the second longest, only after Windows 10 and Windows 11, which is actually the current iteration of Windows. Yes, basically the time gap between the release of Windows 10 and Windows 11 is actually 6 years. Yes, 6 years. I'm actually going to download Windows 11 soon, but I'm not sure if Windows 11 works on this version of VMware, and I'm actually going to wait for a bit. And yes, completing installation. So when I'm actually going to pause, and after that has completed, as you can see, there's actually loading mouse. And I do believe I'm actually going to create a new account by then, but I'm not so sure, because it'll take a while to actually start up Windows Vista. But basically, Windows Vista has also been criticized for slow loading times. I meant booting times, yes, due to the fact Windows Vista is so incredibly powerful. It basically eats up a lot of processing performance, and why not? I'm actually going to name it Win Vista. No passwords, and Win Vista PC, and use recommended settings. Yep. Instead, I'm actually going to change it to New York time, and this is for home. And thank you. And you see a new startup sound, which is also used in Windows 7. I'm not joking. And Windows Vista would actually show this screen. Please wait whilst Windows check your computer's performance. It will take a while. Fun fact, Windows Vista did start development in 2001, the same year Windows XP was released, but development was halted in 2004, but then restarted in 2005, and hence you do have a massive uplift compared to Windows XP in terms of its UI. But just like I said, it does come at a huge cost, because it does consume a ton of power, and therefore many older hardware would actually struggle to run Vista. And as you can see, unfortunately, there is actually Windows Basic. I do have to install VMware tools to actually get the Arrow theme, but here it is, Windows Vista. Basically, you search WinVer here, it will actually show Windows Vista Ultimate, basically a bit below Enterprise. And if you were to go into Properties, yes, Windows Vista Ultimate, yeah, and the rating is actually 1.0. So basically quite low, but why not? I'm actually going to go on to the internet. Yes, it does also include Windows Media Center, but Windows Media Center was first released in Windows XP. Basically, there's a version of Windows XP called Windows XP Media Center Edition. And here's about Internet Explorer, IE7. I'm actually going to download IE9 soon, and why not? I'm actually going to shut down the computer and install Windows 7. Basically, a bug fix to Windows Vista. Fun facts about Windows 7. Windows 7 fixed many of the bugs associated with Vista, such as having less UIC pop-ups, which is actually user account control, improved performance, as well as an improvised arrow system with a redesigned taskbar, new window management features, and it has been received positively. In fact, there's some people which still use Windows 7 to this day, even though it was unsupported 4 years ago. So I'm actually going to power on the virtual machine, and this is Windows 7. And I'll show you guys what the updated arrow meant. Basically, you could even snap pages, kind of like on Windows 11, as I'll show you. Basically, we take it for granted today, but that is a new feature with Windows 7. And as you can see, this does feel like a very modern OS. In fact, Chrome only recently stopped supporting Windows 7 like about a year ago. Yes, 1 year ago. Which means you can still download a relatively modern version of Chrome even to this day. And I still believe Firefox still supports Windows 7. Accept to the license terms. And custom. Remember, we're actually installing a new version of Windows. And it'll take a while. So I'm going to pause. And yeah. After about 2 or 3 minutes, Windows 7 will actually restart. I'm actually going to restart now. And here it is, starting Windows for the first time. With the newer animation compared to Vista. Basically, this did exist in Vista, but only after the starter bar. And is now updating registry settings and starting services, and then completing installation now, and it'll take a while. And basically, setup will continue after restarting the computer. It is going to show the starting Windows logo again, which, as you can see, is quite a cool animation. And as you can see, nowadays you will actually see the screen in the Windows setup. I'm actually going to name it Win7. No password, and I'm actually going to blow out the product key. One, I'm actually going to skip activation and then activate later. And then I'm going to use recommended settings and then change to New York time, of course. Home network. Let's wait for this a bit. And then it'll show up the Windows 7 home screen. And then I'll show you guys what the revamped arrow meant. And why Windows 7 is the first, like, extremely modern OS. With all the, like, bloatware such as Microsoft Store and stuff like that, which are included in Windows 8 and Windows 10 and Windows 11. And as you can see, preparing your desktop. And yeah, it'll take a while. But this is actually Windows 7 Ultimate. Now, because of all the antitrust regulations in the EU did ban Windows 7 like regular edition from being released. Instead, there's actually Windows 7N, which is essentially Windows 7 but without media player. Basically, over here is media player, and this is actually Windows 7. And as you can see, the start menu is actually a bit bigger. The taskbar, yeah. Instead of having like separate programs, instead they're actually icons, kind of like on the modern Windows here. So when I'm actually going to run WinVer for a bit. Yep, Windows 7 Ultimate. And computer properties. And this is actually Windows 7 Ultimate Service Pack 1, which is the latest service pack for Windows 7. And this is actually IE8. And Windows Media Player 12 is actually the last version of Media Player to be released, kind of like Internet Explorer. Because nowadays it's just actually replaced by Groove. Yes, Groove Music. Internet Explorer 8 One, I'm actually going to close all tabs and then going to shut down. And then now I'm actually going to install Windows 8. Yes, Windows 8. Similar to Windows Vista, it is one of the most hated versions of Windows, because Windows 8 was a massive revamp of Windows with a totally radical UI that tried to merge its PC line with its mobile line by including a new start screen with a Metro setting, Windows Store, as well as a Windows Defender antivirus software built in. But because of the new Metro UI, it actually backfired, as many PC enthusiasts do hate the massive revamp that came with Windows 8, including the lack of a start button, and it is therefore hated. So when I'm actually going to install Windows 8 now, over here, and yeah, you do see a new Windows logo, which is also used in Windows 10 as well as Windows 8.1. And Windows 8.1, one of the notable new features is, not only did it improve the Metro UI, I'm actually going to skip the port key now. Unfortunately, there is no option to skip, unlike in Windows 7. I do accept to the license agreements, and let's custom install Windows only, as we're doing a fresh install. And I'm actually going to pause this because it'll take a while. And yeah, after about 2 or 3 minutes, it does prompt you to restart. And yeah, the whole new Metro UI was a huge disaster. Windows 10 basically restored the start menu, the old start menu, just like Windows 7 and stuff, but with some slight tweaks. And over here is Windows 8. Yes, the whole new OS, which of course was massively hated. And fun fact, that same year in 2012, Windows RT was also released, and Windows RT was a total disaster. In fact, the Surface RT, which promised to be like this Windows OS, in fact, because it is actually an ARM architecture rather than an x86 and x64 architecture, therefore many apps such as Chrome and stuff could not be installed. In fact, you could only download stuff from the Windows Store, and the Windows Store was a total disaster at the time. It'll take some time to load, and over here is the startup again. I do feel like I'm actually going to start a new account. I believe so. Basically, we're near the end phase of the setup. As you can see, with the new Windows text, Win 8 PC, why not? Express. I don't want to waste time. I'm gonna sign up without an account, and local, finalizing your settings. And yeah, this Windows 8 was treated kind of like a Windows 8 RTM, whilst Windows 8.1 is basically treated like Windows 8 Service Pack 1, as it only included a start button as well as an enhanced Arrow UI. Actually, Metro UI, sorry. My mistake. Basically, Windows 8 is kind of treated like Windows 8 RTM, whilst Windows 8.1 is kind of treated like Windows 8 Service Pack 1, as Windows 8.1 basically included a few changes, such as the inclusion of the start button, as we all know, as well as, you guessed it, an enhanced Metro UI. And over here is the setup. I'm actually going to wait for a bit, but it does show you how to use the new Metro UI. Unfortunately, it did backfire, as many PC enthusiasts are not very used to this like new UI, and therefore Windows 8 is one of the most hated OSs. Yeah, as you can see, this is what the Metro UI looks like. It is totally revamped, and unfortunately there's no start button over here, so you do have to scroll near the start button. And over here is the start. Basically another way. It is quite cumbersome and very unintuitive for many people, but you could actually see the PC settings here, system and security, and of course the system. and it does look quite modern, but it is generally hated. This Windows 8 did come with IE 10, yeah, which was the current Internet Explorer at the time. And why not, I'm actually going to shut down and install Windows 8 Service Pack 1, aka Windows 8.1. So this is how to shut down. Basically, it was so cumbersome and unintuitive, so therefore it is massively criticized. So shut down anyways. Yeah, it does take a while, but I'm actually going to install Windows 8.1, which was released in 2013. So basically a bit after Windows 8. Basically as a service pack rather than a full OS, but we're going to treat it as a full OS this time around. Oh jeez. I'm actually going to power it off now. And here is Windows 8.1. Basically, Windows 8.1 stopped receiving support around last year, whilst Windows 10 is still being supported and still being used worldwide at schools and in offices and stuff. Basically, Windows 10 is still quite modern. It was superseded by Windows 11 only about 2.5 years ago. Yeah, and this is Windows 8.1 here. Which does include some minor improvements, such as, you guessed it, the start button, as well as an improved start screen. Basically an improved version of the Metro UI. I accepted the license terms, custom, and yes, I'm actually going to pause this because it'll take a while. And now we're finishing the setup for Windows 8.1. I'm actually going to restart now. And here it is, Windows 8.1, basically very similar to Windows 8. And I do believe this start screen actually does show on Windows 10 as well. Basically the startup screen for Windows 8 and 8.1 is also featured on Windows 10. And here you go. Getting devices ready. Getting ready. This will take a while, of course. And after a few seconds, it should load up a new screen, I do believe, to create a new account and stuff. I'm actually going to just name it Win8, just like before. Windows 7 was actually released in 2009. I forgot to mention that in the video, so why not, I'm actually going to mention it now. And of course, similar to Windows 8, people do hate Windows 8.1 just because of the Metro UI and the unintuitive start screen, which is supposed to resemble their Windows Phone OS as well as Windows RT. And use Express settings, why not? They'll check your internet connection, which will take a while. And I do not want a Microsoft account, I just want a local account. In fact, over here you could actually create a local account. One, I'm actually going to name it Win8, just like before. Basically, having a separate account, an email account, I just don't want it. In fact, I just want this to be a local account, because this is going to be for virtual machine demonstrations. Basically, it will take a while. It will show the same things as Windows 8, as this is essentially a Windows 8 service pack, not really a full OS release. But why not, I'm actually going to wait for a bit. And here you go, let's start there. As you can see, the new start button. However, there's no new start menu. Unfortunately, that will be introduced in Windows 10. So therefore, 8.1 is still hated by a lot of people. And just like popular myth, Windows 9 did not exist. And here's why. It is due to the fact there was actually Windows 9X, which did take up Windows 9, unfortunately. So therefore, this is 8.1, and then it is jumped to 10. And over here is the Windows Store. You could actually download apps and stuff. I'm not going to. And there's a new background. Yes, and this is actually Windows 8 Enterprise over here. And if you want to go on the internet, this is actually IE 11, which is the very last version of Internet Explorer. You can actually download Edge, I do believe, on this. And basically, I'm actually going to search for the control panel. The control panel. And of course, I'm actually going to go to System and Security. Here's the system. It does show 8.1 Enterprise. And I'm actually going to shut down the computer, which of course is quite cumbersome, especially if you're coming from older versions of Windows, and therefore Windows 8.1 is also hated. So why not? I'm actually going to install Windows 10. Yes, Windows 10. Still being used by many people throughout the world, as it's still being supported though, even though Windows 10 would stop getting support next year. Unfortunately, it has been a long run, and Windows 10 did include a ton of new features. It improved a lot of things with Windows 8, such as the fact it restored the start menu from prior Windows whilst having a separate touch-based UI upon request in the settings app. It added support for Cortana basically up until 2021, which was 3 years ago, and it also introduced Microsoft Edge, and it was the last 32-bit OS ever because Windows 11 stopped supporting 32-bit. And of course, you will see the Windows 10 boot screen does look like Windows 8 and Windows 8.1. And over here is the setup. Setup is now starting. Fun fact, in the beginning of 2015, I did try out Windows 10 Beta. Yes, basically I used Windows 10 Beta as kind of like my daily driver alongside my MacBook Pro from 2013 at the time. And here it is. Windows 10 was released in 2015, by the way, and I do accept the license terms. And of course, I'm actually going to pause this because it will take a while. And after about 5 minutes, this setup would actually complete. I'm actually going to restart now. And this will probably be the last OS in this part of the video, because I'm actually going to set up for Windows 11 as well as the Windows servers later on. So that will be in essentially part 3 of the video, which will happen much later. But as you can see, this is actually Windows 10. The boot screen. Getting ready, of course. Basically, the Windows 7 and Windows 8, Windows 8.1, Windows 10, and of course Windows Vista, their setup is quite similar, and I do believe Windows 11 would have quite similar setup to these previous operating systems. Well, basically, Windows Vista is actually the introduction of the new setup system compared to prior Windows OSs, where you do see a different setup UI. And of course, getting Windows ready. Do not turn off your computer. It actually redirected me to administrator for some reason. I just don't know how, but maybe that might be the end of Windows 10 setup. So why not? I'm actually going to add Windows 11 and Windows servers and stuff. Yes, as you can see, it does include Notepad++, OpenOffice, Firefox and Chrome and stuff. But I have to update these, as these are actually old versions. But as you can see, it's quite cool. This is actually newer Windows 10 UI with the bright blue rather than the dark blue background. Wow, it actually includes all the apps. I'm so surprised at this ISO. I'm not going to show you guys where I download these ISOs. You can easily find them online and stuff. But over here is Windows 10. I'm actually going to go into WinVer to show you guys what it is all about. Yes, Windows 10 2.1H1, which is the more recent build of Windows 10. Unlike the previous OSs, Windows 10 does not have any service packs. Instead, it has more periodic updates, which actually add a few features over time instead of a ton of features all in one sitting. So therefore, it is a lot more efficient than those of previous Windows where they do have service packs and stuff. And over here, I'm actually going to search for the control panel, which still exists alongside the settings app. Yes, I'm not joking. So system and security, here's the system, which redirects you to the settings app. And this is Windows 10 Pro. I'm actually gonna restart, actually shut down, and why not, I'm actually going to see you guys soon. Okay guys, early in the video you might see the fact, instead of actually going into this screen, the setup actually jumps straight into the desktop, because the Windows 10 ISO that I actually retrieved was actually a pre-installed one, and therefore it did jump into the desktop with Notepad++, as well as several other apps pre-installed, and I did not want it. So therefore I actually did get this Windows 10 ISO from the Windows website, which meant this is actually an official ISO. I did skip the product key and stuff. In fact, I actually did get the ISO like around 2 years ago, even though I should have got one from Windows website and actually created the pre-installation media, but I actually didn't for some reason, and therefore I ended up with this pre-installed ISO. So why not, I'm actually going to set up. So let's set it to the US. And US keyboard, let's just skip a second keyboard layout. And this is the very last version of Windows where you could actually have a setting to actually add your local account. Because for Windows 11, even though you could add a local account, it is actually a lot more complicated than with Windows 10. I'm actually going to wait for this. Okay guys, after about 1 minute with that screen, why not, I'm actually going to set up for personal use, and I'm just going to add a random name. So instead I'm actually going to have an offline account. Okay, Win10, why not? Just like before, I'm actually going to not set up a password. Accept. Accept. And just skip, and it will show you guys the Windows 10 screen in just a while. Accept, and here you go. Basically this is the intro for Windows 10 here, to create a new account. Unfortunately, like the previous setup was pre-installed, so therefore I did not get to show you guys this screen. And once you're actually finished with the screen, you're actually going to be redirected to the home screen. As you can see, this is what Windows 10 looks like. This is actually a much later build of Windows 10, just like I told you guys. And why not, I'm actually going to shut down this operating system. Okay guys, this is the very final part of the video, which does discuss about Windows 11 as well as the subsequent Windows Server editions, including Server 2003, which is essentially XP, Server 2008, which is essentially Windows Vista Server, Server 2008 R2, which is essentially Windows 7, and basically these are Windows 8, Windows 8.1, Windows 10, and of course Windows 11 Server, respectively. So basically Windows 11 is available as a free upgrade from Windows 10, and it introduced a new UI with a revamped start menu. As you can see over here, this is actually a new start menu, and soon it will include AI support with ChatGPT and Bing, and it is the first OS to include Android app support. Due to the pandemic and the rise in remote work, Windows 11 does include a new app called Microsoft Teams over here, as I'll show you. And also, it did remove 32-bit support, so unfortunately you do need a 64-bit device to actually run Windows 11. Windows 11 was first released in 2021, so basically a year after the pandemic, and also it did stop support for any devices older than, I believe, 2017. So basically any device 2016 older would not support Windows 11, as Windows 11 does require Kaby Lake. So I'm not sure if it actually works on this VMware, because this VMware is a bit older. It was first released in 2019, so basically 2 years before Windows 11. So I'm not sure if Windows 11 actually works on this VMware. As you can see, a new VMware screen. I'm not really sure if it actually works, or if I do have to download a new version of VMware. Press any key, and as you can see, the new Windows logo. Yes, the current Windows logo, and basically the loading circle looks a bit different from Windows 8 and Windows 10. And of course setup is very similar, yes, as you can see, but I'm not sure if it actually works because Windows 11 does require a TPM module, and I'm actually going to skip the product key section for now. Unfortunately, this PC cannot run Windows 11, so why not? I'm actually going to download maybe VirtualBox or something to be able to run Windows 11, unfortunately, because of the system requirements. Basically, after some walk around, I finally got Windows 11 to start, but I'm not sure if it actually works. This is actually the latest version of VirtualBox, yes, the latest version of VirtualBox, which does support Windows 11, and therefore I'm actually going to download a version of Windows 11, maybe with the product key here. And yeah, finally it does show this page rather than the cannot install Windows 11 error, and why not custom install Windows only. And here it is. Unfortunately, I did have the wrong version of VMware, which is quite old. It is actually a 2019 VMware, and I do need the latest version of VMware. And I'm actually going to pause now because it will take a while. And after a while, of course, Windows 11 would actually restart, as you can see, with the VirtualBox logo rather than the Windows logo like in VMware for some reason. And I actually did get this ISO from Microsoft's website, yes, the official website rather than some of the third-party sites. So you can actually find the ISO there. It's quite legal compared to some of the other shady sites, of which I don't want to tell you because I'm scared my video might get taken down for piracy. And as you can see, this is the new boot screen, yes, as well as the start sound. And my region is actually the US. Well, the setup does look quite different from Windows 8 and 8.1 and 10, slightly different. The US, I'm actually going to skip adding a second keyboard layout, and let's wait a few seconds, checking for updates. I'm not sure if I could use a local account on Windows 11 or if I have to use a Microsoft account, but why not? Let's check for a bit. And it does say your PC will restart, so why not? The PC will restart for a bit, and then of course you actually encountered this. I don't know what issue is here, but as you can see, I'm now redirected into, I believe, maybe to create an account or something. As you can see, let's name your device Win 11. Yes, Win 11. And of course, just a moment. Let's wait for a bit. And then after installing Windows 11, I'm actually going to install the Windows servers. Yes, I do include Windows servers in this video, despite the fact this video is quite long. In fact, more than 1.5 hours as of current, which is quite crazy. Basically about as long as my Hanoi vlog, yes. And I do believe it does tell you to create a new user account. I'm not sure, but let's wait for a bit. It does take a while, I know. Personal use. I'm gonna see if I could even create a local account or not, or if I have to create an account, yeah. Jeez. It'll take some time, but who knows? Because I just don't want to show my identity. Oh, jeez. Basically, to actually have a local account, you do have to hit Shift F10, and then the command prompt would appear, and then type this command: OOBE / bypass NRO. And of course, Windows would actually restart, and then of course, after the restart, then hit Shift plus F10 once again. Of course, I'm actually going to wait for this to start, and then going to hit Shift F10. And this time type ipconfig space slash release, and then close the command prompt, and then continue with the installation. Basically now I'm actually doing this again. Once again, let's connect to the network and then say I don't have the internet, and then continue with limited setup, which means you could actually create a local account now instead of having to use your account. I'm not going to enter password this time, and basically just enable some of these which are not really relevant. And of course, here it is, Windows 11 finished setting up without having to have a Microsoft account or really any BS like this. In fact, you could actually do a completely local account. You just have to do some runarounds a bit, so you do have to be tech savvy to be able to figure this out, of course, but I actually show you guys, and why not, I'm actually going to pause the video for a bit. And of course, once it says almost there, that means you can actually start Windows 11 over here. As you can see, unfortunately it is in Pacific time, and Windows is quite limited in what it could offer because there's actually no internet. I'm actually going to set up internet soon, and over here is WinVer, and of course it is Windows 11 similar to this. I'm actually going to connect to the internet soon and then probably revise it a bit, but I do not want an administrator account, so therefore I have limited setup. But I'm actually going to connect to the internet later. So basically, here is the settings. I'm going to show you guys the version, and over here is actually Edge. Basically, this is Windows 11 VirtualBox. And if you were to go to, I think, System, you actually see the About here, yeah. Basically the same thing, VirtualBox. And this is even more in depth with the processor and the installed RAM, 6 gigs of RAM. Basically, I'm actually going to shut down and of course install Windows Server, which does not require a newer version of VMware or VirtualBox. Why not? We're installing Server 03. Basically, another name for Windows XP Server Edition, because it does run on the same skin and architecture as Windows XP. So basically it is quite similar to Windows XP in many things, and setup is actually starting Windows now. I'm actually going to wait for a while and continue, and F8, and of course install using NTFS quick. And now setup is actually formatting. It'll take a while. And of course, I'm actually going to pause this for now. And after a few seconds, of course, it will actually restart and redirect you to Server 03. Yes, Standard Edition. And over here is what this startup screen looks like. Yes, similar to Windows XP. And setup will finish in approximately 40 minutes from now. So basically it will be a long time, but in reality it's more like 10 or 20 minutes because it's actually VMware. And after installing the devices, it will show you guys the screen just like Windows XP. I'm actually going to name it Windows on Windows just like before. And of course the product key, I'm actually going to blur this part. And of course after typing in the product key, of course you're going to select this. I don't really care. And of course it will install the network. Yes, this is Windows Server 2003. So basically similar to Windows XP, but except the Server Edition of Windows XP. It actually stopped support only 1 year after Windows XP, so it stopped support in 2015. And I do believe there are actually 2 service packs. And now it's just installing network for a bit, so it takes some time for sure. And after a few seconds, it'll show you guys typical settings. Of course, just select a work group and it'll copy files, which will take some time for sure. And of course, after about a few minutes, it'll save settings. So basically, I'm near the end now. And of course, I do believe it'll restart. And instead of showing the new Windows XP login scheme, instead it'll show the login scheme from basically the workgroup and domain versions of Windows XP, as well as older Windows versions, as I'll show you guys. Because Server 2003 does not benefit from the quote-unquote personal use of Windows XP with the new login scheme. So basically, it will save settings. I don't know how long it will take, but soon it will actually shut down and of course restart, as you can see here. And of course, you'll see a fresh version of Server 03. Yes, as you can see over here, this is the standard edition. And just like I said, there's no new login scheme. Instead, this is the more classic login scheme here. And they'll force me to like press Ctrl Alt Delete, just like with that of many workplaces and stuff, where you have to press Ctrl Alt Delete to be able to go into the system. Wow, it even has media player as well, but I'm not sure if there is actually any stop menu or sound. But in fact, this is actually a classic UI. It does not include the Lunar UI, kind of like Windows Server 2008 and 2008 R2, which also includes only the classic UI, unfortunately. But if you want to run with WinVer, you get this. Basically, this is actually Service Pack 2, and of course, if you go on properties, it'll actually show the Server 2003 Standard Edition Service Pack 2. So when I'm actually going to shut down this, and of course it will say other, I don't know. Okay, so install Server 2008 now. Basically, quote unquote Windows Vista Server. Basically, no personal home would have any server OS except for Windows Home Server, which was actually released around 2005 and 2006. It is quite obscure and quite an underrated OS. In fact, many of these server OSs are actually used in big corporations and public schools and stuff, and of course hospitals and utility services. And here it is. Instead of being colorful, it is instead gray compared to Windows Vista. And I'm actually going to select the language to English, of course, and it'll prompt me for a product key, of course, but I'm not sure if it does prompt at this time, but please wait. So who knows, maybe I'm going to pause the video when it does say about the product key. This is actually an AIO, which means older versions combined into one CD. So I'm actually going to use Server 2008 Standard Full Edition. Custom, of course, unallocated space. It'll take a while, of course, and then I'm actually going to pause this part. And after a while, it would of course restart. Windows Server 2008, just like 2008 R2, actually stopped receiving support in 2020, unlike Windows Vista, which stopped receiving support in 2017. And of course, the boot screen for Windows Server 2008 is going to be very similar to that of Windows Vista, despite the fact Windows Server 2008 does not include the Arrow UI and instead includes the classic UI. Yes, just like that of Windows Server 2003 and of course Windows 9X. So basically, this is a lot less sophisticated than that of Vista, which does look much better than Server 2008, despite the fact Server 2008 looks a lot newer than Vista. And of course, it is completing installation now. I'm actually going to pause for a bit. And after a while, Windows would of course restart. As you can see over here, I'm not sure what it'll go into. because Windows Server setup is slightly different from that of mainstream Windows. Of course, the user's password must be changed for some reason. And of course, I'm not going to add in a password. And preparing your desktop, this is what Windows Server 2008 looks like. Yes, with of course a more drab classic theme than the Arrow UI. And of course, I'm going to select it for home. Why not? I know this is Windows Server. Yeah, it does still include the new start menu, Windows Server Standard, Service Pack 2, and of course if you were to go into Run VMware there, it would still show Windows Server 2008 Standard, Service Pack 2, which is the newest service pack. And why not, let's install Windows Server 2008 R2. Yes, of course, shutdown in Windows Server is quite different from that of regular Windows versions. And of course I'm going to start the R2 edition, which is essentially nicknamed as Windows 7 Server because its release actually coincided with Windows 7's release. And of course, starting Windows, actually I don't know if there is the Windows animation. There is. Yeah, despite the fact it is actually Windows Server though. Yes, the Windows 7 animation. I'm actually going to wait for a bit, but I'm not sure how Windows Server 2008 R2 setup looks like. If it's anything like Windows 7 or it's it's more like Windows Server 2008. Yes, a more grayed out version. And of course, setup is now starting here, and it'll be quite cool to see. I'm actually going to download the full installation of the Server 2008 R2 Standard. And I accept to the license terms, of course, custom. I'm going to pause for a bit. And of course, after a few minutes, of course, Windows would actually restart. As you can see over here, this is Server 2008 R2, basically with the same boot screen as Windows Vista and Server 2008. With this part, ironically, I'm actually going to wait for a bit. I'm not sure what the real boot screen would look like, but you'll actually see in the end of the video, because I'll actually install VMware tools and install Firefox and basically everything, and this would look like an amazing decoration rather than just like having 16 color on some of the older versions of Windows. It'll basically look amazing at the end. And of course I'll pause this part because it's quite redundant. And of course this same error would show up. So the user's password must be changed before logging on for the first time. Why not? I'm not going to do anything. Unfortunately, they do require passwords, so why not? I'm actually going to add a password. Okay, so they do require password, unfortunately. And it did type in a password. Over here is the start menu. Basically kind of like Windows 7, but except in the classic mode, unfortunately. And there is actually no sound in this. So I cannot show you guys the startup sound. But over here is the properties here. Server 2008 R2 Standard. And of course, if you want to go on here, type in VMware though, it would actually show the version, the standard. And this is what IE looks like, IE8. Of course, I'm actually going to shut down. And of course, you have to add in a comment here. And of course, afterwards, I'm going to install Windows Server 2012, which is the very first Windows Server to not include a classic theme. Instead, it includes a toned down version of the Metro theme. Yes, I'm not joking. I'm going to show you guys what I meant. But I do believe it is a toned down Metro UI. And over here is, you guessed it, similar to Windows 8. And of course, ironically, it's the R2. So why not? I'm actually going to pause for a bit. And ironically, Server 2012 R2 is actually Server 2012. So why not? I'm actually going to swap the ISOs. Yes, this looks a lot more correct. As you can see, English, US. I'm actually going to wait for setup to start. Ironically, I actually messed these two OSs up. The product key, of course, I'm going to pause. And of course, I'm actually going to install Server 2012 Standard, server core installation or server with the GUI. Why not? I'm actually going to choose the GUI. Because it looks more cool than without a graphical user interface, kind of like with older DOS edition, so custom install Windows only. And of course, I'm actually going to pause this for a bit because it will take a while. And basically after a few minutes, it will prompt you to restart. So when I'm actually going to restart the system here, and of course, it will restart Windows Server 2012, which is quite cool. It will take a while to actually start, but here it is. Basically, I'm not sure how setup what looks like. Basically, we all know Windows Server does have quite different setup compared with the Windows Consumer Edition, because Windows Server is typically not sold to consumers. You could actually find the ISO on Microsoft's website, but in reality I actually got the free trial of Windows Server 2022, which is actually the current iteration of Windows Server. Yes, you can actually find the ISO on the website, even the official ISO on the official website. And of course, I don't know if I should enter in a password. Oh, I'm forced to enter a password. Jeez, I'm actually going to add in a random password here. Finalizing settings, of course. So those look very, very different from that of Windows 8 setup, of course. And of course, we'll finalize settings, and then let's see for a while. And of course, you two have to press Ctrl-Alt-Delete to log in. I'm actually going to log in now, and here it is. Yes, as you can see, a toned down Metro UI compared with the classic UI over here. This kind of reminds me of Windows Vista Basic versus Windows Vista Aero. So of course you could actually change the screen resolution, and of course, unfortunately, there's no sound. I do have to install sound cards on this, and it does include the start menu. Yes, basically it also includes Internet Explorer. It is quite basic compared to Windows 8, but over here is the Windows Server 2012 start menu. Basically coincides with Windows 8 Server. And of course, I'm actually going to power off. And of course, you don't even have to add a comment. In other Windows Server editions, particularly older ones, you do have to add in a comment. I'm actually going to edit the virtual machine settings and then change it to, of course, the older 2012. Yes, basically I did swap the names, unfortunately. And loading files, of course, it'll be quite similar. And of course, this will be the R2, which will include a start button. Yes, just like Windows 8.1. Of course, English US, install now. Setup is now starting. It'll take a while. And of course, I'm going to use the server with the GUI standard edition. And it does say evaluation. I do believe this is actually a trial version, so it'll only work for like 90 days until I really need like some product key or something to continue using it. And of course, it'll finish setting up for sure. And in a while, it'll show restarting in how many seconds it is. And I'm actually going to restart and wait for the OS to actually boot. It is quite exciting to see Server 2012 R2 with, of course, a toned down version of the Metro UI, unlike with Windows 8 and Windows 8.1. And of course, it'll take a while for sure. I'm actually going to install sound cards and stuff. Basically, none of these Windows Server editions really include sound. I don't believe so, but I'm not so sure. I actually did install Windows Server on one of my computers when I was like 13 or 14 years old. Yes, basically when I was 11, 12, 13, 14, I did like learn about how to add a domain controller. I basically installed a Windows 7 machine and then a Windows Server 2008 R2 machine, connected these two devices together, and then actually joined Windows 7 into my Windows Server 2008 R2 domain when I was still a preteen. That's a fun fact about me. And of course, finish. and Control Alt Delete, and of course it'll be a lot more drab than that of Windows 8.1, but I do believe it includes a start button. Yes, unfortunately the license is expired. I think it might be too long ago. And here it is, the desktop, of course, in enhanced Metro UI. Of course, this is only for virtualization, like purposes, so I'm not gonna really activate it or anything. I don't care if I really pirate any product key. It is really only for personal use and only for demonstrations, and it will take so long for me to even like buy all the product keys and stuff, and be prohibitively expensive. And Microsoft no longer supports these Windows Server anymore, so why not install Windows Server 2016, which is essentially Windows 10 Server. Windows Server 2016 is still being supported to this day, of course. And let me power on the virtual machine for a bit, and it'll show in the setup for Windows Server 2016. Yeah, which is quite new, in fact. And here is actually the setup here. I'm actually going to select English US and then install now. Actually here I'm going to show you guys maybe Server 2016 standard with desktop experience over here. This is of course evaluation as well. This is actually with the GUI, just like the previous Windows servers I just showed you guys. Of course, just accept. And custom install Windows only, and of course select this, and of course I'm going to pause this for a bit. And of course after this, of course Windows Server 2016 would actually restart. As you can see later, it'll show finishing up here. It'll finish up in a while, and of course I think Windows would actually restart. Over here I'm actually going to restart, and soon I'm going to install Windows Server 2019, which was released a bit after I moved to this apartment in Cambridge. So basically I moved to this apartment in Cambridge prior to the pandemic, which is after I moved to the Boston area. So basically I lived in a western Boston suburb around 5 to 10 miles from Boston around several years before moving to this Cambridge apartment. So it is not Cambridge, but it is another affluent suburb. And of course let's start Windows Server 2016. So why not? Getting ready, of course. And basically I don't know what screen it'll take me to, but maybe it'll take me into the login. Of course I'm now 30 minutes into this recording, which is quite long. I know this is a really long video. This is about 2 hours as of now, I believe so. And of course, I'm not sure if I could go without a password or if I require a password. I'm actually going to use the same password as some of the others without showing my password. Control Alt Delete, and of course I'm going to type in the password. It is quite similar to the Windows 10 login screen. And here you go. Basically it does have the Windows 10 logo, the original Windows 10 logo, as I just said, the dark blue one. And unfortunately there's no sound installed, but as you can see there's the Windows 10 UI, and this is Server Manager over here. I'm actually going to shut down after showing you guys the Windows edition. So basically go to Control Panel. I'm actually going to shut this down. Of course, System, this is the standard evaluation of Server 2016. And why not, I'm actually going to shut down the PC. Other unplanned, and of course download Windows Server 2019. So basically some of these older servers, 2012 and 2016, were basically released around the time I was in that western Boston suburb. So why not start Server 2019, which is basically the second iteration of Windows 10 essentially. And of course I'm not sure if this VMware really supports this server or not, but unfortunately there's no mouse. I just don't know what to do with this. Oh jeez. Maybe I'm gonna try on VirtualBox, because VirtualBox is the later version, which is really built for Server 2019 and stuff. So basically, after a short while, I'll actually install a newer version of VMware. I cannot in this video because I don't really have time, and then install these respective Windows servers and Windows 11 on VMware Workstation, the current edition. So basically now setup is starting though, and I'm going to select the desktop experience. Why not? Basically, we all know VMware Workstation will be far superior to Oracle VM VirtualBox, because VirtualBox is essentially free, and therefore it does not have as many features as, of course, VMware Workstation, which is far superior because it does cost some money. It does include some new additions to, of course, VMware Player, which is a lot cheaper, of course. I'm actually going to pause this for a bit. So basically, Windows Server 2019 is nearly finished with setup, yes. Now this is near the very last version, which is Windows Server 2022. Yes, from the past 2 years. Basically released the same time as Windows 11, ironically in 2021. And of course English US. Oh geez, I'm actually going to disable, of course I might disable the ISO. So I'm going to reset, why not? Don't press any key. Sorry, I actually pressed the key, so I ended up having to reinstall Windows Server 2019. Yeah. And of course, this is what the startup looks like. Similar to Windows 10. Starting services, getting devices ready. All these boring stuff. Getting ready. And it'll reboot again. And don't press anything, really. Restarting once more. Again and again. Yeah, this is the second to last. And of course, I do have to enter password. Unfortunately, just like I showed you guys from 2008 R2 though. And of course, finalizing your settings. And Control Alt Delete. Input. And of course, admin. And this is what Windows Server 2019 looks like. Yes, I'm not joking. It does have the Windows 10 UI, and it's so ironic. There's actually the dark blue Windows 10 background. I mean the older Windows 10 wallpaper. I'm actually going to go to Start and Settings there and see out the version of Windows. Why not? System About. Actually, it is Server 2019. It is also in evaluation, just like 2012 R2, 2016, and of course the current iteration. Basically, this is the standard evaluation here. I'm actually going to close and then turn off. And ironically, it includes Internet Explorer, despite the fact Edge has been out for like 4 years already. So shut down this. And I'm going to install the very, very last version of Windows, Windows Server 2022. Yes. The very last version of Windows on this video is Server 2022. And then I'm going to see you guys later. Install everything. Basically, I do have to insert a bootable disk, so why not? I'm going to add in an ISO here. So basically here it is. After a while, I actually got into Windows Server 2022 over here, and it does include mouse supports, and you would find out the new Windows logo just like that of Windows 11. And of course, desktop experience. Next. This is also standard evaluation. I actually recently got this ISO, so it is brand new compared to some of the other ones. I downloaded like either yesterday or years ago, in fact. In fact, I actually first downloaded all of these ISOs and even attempted this exact video around 2 years ago when I actually first built this PC. So I actually downloaded some of the older Windows ISOs. So if you see the date as 2 years ago, I actually did download these 2 years ago. Then after a while, it would restart. Ironically, it does show the older Windows logo, yes. The Windows 10 and Windows 8 logo. Even though the Windows 11 startup logo actually looks like this. Yes, I'm not joking. I just don't know how this exists. And ironically, from what I see on the internet, I've not really tried Windows Server 2022 yet, but I'm very curious to see what the UI looks like. If it's anything like Windows 11 or like Windows 10, don't do anything here. Just let it be. And of course, this does sound kind of like Windows 10, ironically, yeah. Despite the fact it is a new Windows Server. Of course, I do have to enter in the password. Oh my goodness. Finish. And here you go. Basically, input, Control Alt Delete. And administrator, it kind of looks like Windows 10 despite the fact it was released the same time as Windows 11. It's so ironic there. Who knows about the next server iteration, if it looks like Windows 11 or not. I'll show you guys the release day from Windows Server 2022. Yeah. Basically around the same time as Windows 11. But ironically, it still kind of looks like the second edition of Windows 10 essentially. Basically with this light blue background. And of course uses Edge rather than Internet Explorer. But this is the very last Windows Server I'm going to show you guys, and therefore the very last OS. If I were to show you guys the system, it is actually the very current version of Windows Server here. Standard evaluation. And therefore I'm going to shut down. And thank you guys for watching. If you made it to the end, please give a big thumbs up, because I'm actually going to continue maybe another 10 or 15 minutes or even 20 minutes just showing you guys all the modifications I made to all my virtual machines, so stay tuned. After that, I'm actually going to stop the video now at 3, 2, 1, stop. Okay guys, after spending about 5 days installing various applications as well as add-ons, here are some of the embellishments I added to this machine. I'm actually going to start with Windows 1.0. Unfortunately, for Windows 1, Windows 2, Windows 3, and Windows 3.1 and Windows NT 3.1, I did not really add much. And for Windows 1 and Windows 2 and Windows 3, I basically added nothing. So why not? I'm actually going to start Windows 1.0. Unfortunately, I do have to remove the floppy drive, actually disconnect, and I'm actually going to turn on exclusive mode. Why not? And actually free stretch, because it does give a more cool appearance. And I think I might also put on exclusive mode. Actually view and exclusive, and here it is. I'm actually going to shift F9 now and Windows /Win. Oh jeez, cannot find Windows startup files. I don't know what I did here, but I'm actually going to show you guys later. Why not? I'm actually going to skip to Windows Windows 2.0. So I'm actually going to shut down this and turn on Windows 2.0. Okay guys, as you can see before, I did get an error. In fact, I did have to reinstall Windows 1.0 once again to actually get rid of the error. And as you can see, this is what the UI for Windows 1.0 looks like, with the right program and of course Reversi. Yes, one of the first Windows games. It's quite primitive in today's standards, but as you can see, this is a full color UI, and it is quite crazy to use Windows 1.0 today. Yeah. Basically, as we all know, Windows 1.0 is significantly older than me. And basically, it is kind of crazy to actually go back in time to actually use some of the older OSs. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to buy a Commodore and actually review to you guys what the machine looks like, but it's going to be quite impressive if I were to be able to buy a Commodore. And as you can see, it still recognizes today's date, despite the fact this is a 16-bit machine. And it does have a lot of apps still, but unfortunately I'm actually going to shut down. And as you can see, yeah, basically I'm actually going to shut down and see you guys later. I don't know what happened with Windows 1.0 though. But I could do Windows 2.0. And here you go, yeah. You can basically see I did add a color interface. Unfortunately, the previous interface was black and white for some reason. That was because I did insert a monochrome display. Now I'm actually going to correct the video. So basically, instead of selecting what I selected, instead select what is shown on the picture. Basically, that was my mistake. But as you can see, this is Windows, and I could go on reverse C, for example. And here it is. This is just a basic game here. Quite a basic game. And now if you were to close, I'm actually going to go to the Write app, which is a predecessor of WordPad. Instead of actually saving, I'm actually going to close. I'm actually going to show you guys a functional version of Windows 1.0 later. Unfortunately, I did not get it to work for some reason. I just don't know how. But Windows 1.0 has always given me errors in previous years but actually downloading, and this is actually Windows 3.0. Unfortunately, there are no new embellishments to Windows 3.0. Basically, Windows 3.0 has stayed still ever since the installation, and I never reinstalled it. Okay. And here's Windows 3.0 here, complete with all the apps and stuff. Unfortunately, nothing has changed. Basically, everything remained the same. This would be the last Windows OS without a startup sound. However, I did not install a startup sound for Windows NT 3.1 and Windows 95. Even though Windows 95 does have a cool startup sound, unfortunately, I did not get it to work. Basically, Windows 95, like the Windows protection error, would always pop up, even if I installed the fixed 95 CPU. So I'm not really able to install Sound Blaster, unfortunately, because whenever I install Sound Blaster, Windows 95 would crash there. And I'm actually going to start Windows 3.1 now. In fact, even though I failed to install Office 4.3, I actually did install a Sound Blaster, which is a good thing. As you can see, this is the Windows 3.1 startup sound with audio software and stuff. And if you want to see, this is actually Creative Mixer. You also have accessories, which shows some of the basic apps and stuff. And you do have Media Player, yeah. A very primitive version, however. And I do believe this is actually Media Player 3.1. As you can see, this is actually the shutdown sound for 3.1. And I'm actually going to shut down this. and load NT 3.1 there. As you can see, this is what NT 3.1 is. Yeah, NT 3.1 here. As you can see, it does load this time, but it does take quite a while to load. Here are some of the games. And unfortunately, there's no internet browser, but 95 actually does have an internet browser. However, I was not able to connect it to the internet. I'm actually going to download another copy of Windows 95 and maybe show you guys at the end of the video if I could. But who knows? Then shut down the guests. Why not? I'm actually going to hop to Windows 95 now. As you can see, Windows 95 Plus here. And this is what the VM looks like. I'm actually going to view in exclusive mode now. Over here I did download Internet Explorer 5 as well as Opera. Basically, this is the only OS where I downloaded Opera because the version of Firefox is way too old. I do believe 95 only supported like Firefox 1 or something. I'm not really sure though. But I did download VMware tools. Unfortunately, I did not get to download a Sound Blaster. As I just told you guys, Windows 95 would actually crash and would show protection error, which meant I just have to reinstall Windows 95 over and over again. But I did install Microsoft Plus for Windows 9X, as well as IE 5.5 here. Unfortunately, there's no internet on this, but here it is, Internet Explorer 5.5. And it also does have Opera. Unfortunately, Windows Sockets 2.0 is required to actually run Opera. Well, that is essentially the internet. I just have to set up TCP IP, which I couldn't really because Windows 95 would actually crash. And I did download Macromedia Flash Player 7, I believe so, which was the latest version to support Windows 95. And here's some of my other programs. 7-Zip, basically an old version called 9.2. And Windows Media Player. Unfortunately, I don't think I even have Media Player, even though there is Media Player, albeit a really antiquated version of Media Player. I think maybe that seems like Media Player is 6.4. Yeah, 6.4. Unfortunately, don't have Media Player 7 on this, despite the fact the latest, I believe, which could run on Windows 95 is actually Media Player 7 from year 2000. And I also downloaded VLC, basically the very ancient 0.86, but the DLL is not being found, so therefore I did not really get to download much on 95. Why not? I'm actually going to shut down and show you guys what it is like. And I'm actually now going to hop into Windows NT 4. Basically, the first fully fledged OS, according to all my virtual machines, with internet support and stuff. Even though Windows 95 and 3.1 did support the internet, unfortunately, I could not connect any of these operating systems to the internet whatsoever. I'm actually going to put exclusive mode on Windows NT. I actually did download Service Pack 6, install VMware tools as well as drivers and stuff, Sound Blaster, as I'll show you guys. And I also downloaded IE6 and Firefox 2.0.0.20, which was the latest version of Firefox for Windows NT. And I also downloaded Macromedia Flash Player 7. As you can see, this is actually Media Player 7 over here. I also downloaded Office XP. Basically for Windows 95, I forgot to show you guys Office 2000, but this is actually Office XP over here. Unfortunately, I do have to have a product key. Okay guys, this is a more clear view of this. Basically, I also downloaded 7-zip 9.2 over here, a very old version of 7-zip, and VLC over here, basically an antiquated version of VLC. And I do believe I also installed, let me guess, I think that's basically it. But I do have this. I think I just use media player, why not? As you can see, sound does work properly. I'm actually going to shut down Windows NT. And here you go. I'm actually going to head on to Windows 98. Yes. Basically, unlike 95, even though there was actually an error, actually a shell error, I did actually disable 32-bit drivers, and whenever I need CD, I actually do add in a driver. And here you go. It does have startup sound. Which is quite a good thing. I did install Sound Blaster as well as VMware tools over here. I also installed IE6 as well as Firefox 8 because I actually installed Kernel EX, which does allow like later versions of Firefox as well as VLC to be installed and stuff. So that's quite a plus because I don't have to deal with Firefox 2. So I basically could even browse the internet here. So if I were to go on like say like just a basic site, I could, but if I use like maybe a hardcore site, maybe it would not really load. So why not? I'm actually going to search something. As you can see, Google still works, even though this is an antiquated version of Firefox. Actually, Firefox 8 here, because I installed Kernel EX. And I did download Office XP as well over here. This is actually Office XP. And I actually downloaded Macromedia Flash Player 9, which is actually now called Adobe Flash Player 9. And also I installed 7-zip 9.2. I believe so. This is actually 7-zip over here. And Windows Media Player, this is actually Media Player 9. And I also installed VLC as well, Media Player. So basically this similar theme would actually go on with several different operating systems. And I installed Windows Plus for 98. Just like for Windows 95, I actually did install their version of Plus, by the way. And if I were to play some music, here's actually some Bach here. And this is how to shut down. I'm actually going to move on to Windows 2000. Unfortunately for like Windows Vista, Server 08, 7, Server 08 R2, 8, Server 2012, 8.1 and 2012 R2, and Windows 10, I did have to modify some settings to be able to get the buzzy sound to get away. Basically, I went on the VMX, edited it on Notepad, and actually removed the like the HD sound or something, and then actually installed the sound driver on VMware. So basically that's how I fixed the sound problem, the crackling sound as you could hear on the Vista setup. And over here is Windows 2000. Yes, Windows 2000. I basically downloaded VMware tools. I installed Sound Blaster. I installed IE6, Firefox 12. I also installed Flash Player 12, I believe so, on Windows 2000, because Windows 2000 could support more than 98 and ME. Actually download Office 03 instead of like XP though. I also downloaded the latest version of 7-Zip, as well as Media Player 9 and VLC Media Player over here. Basically, I will put it on exclusive mode here, and this is what my computer looks like. This is IE6 for sure. And for Firefox, you can actually search more modern stuff. It actually works better than Firefox 8 because this is actually Firefox 12 from a year later. Albeit it's not going to be a very good experience searching for really anything. I know it's low on virtual memory and stuff, so I don't really think I might be able to do much on this at all. But this is just a demonstration of all the embellishments I made to various operating systems. Of course, this is the Media Player 9 over here. And I'm actually going to shut down and continue with Windows ME. I'm actually going to boot from the hard disk. And over here is Windows ME Millennium Edition. Okay, I'm actually going to put in exclusive mode now, and it's updating system settings for a bit. But I also downloaded kernel EX just like in 98. I did install VMware tools as well as the Sound Blaster. However, no Windows Plus, unfortunately. It also has IE6 over here and Firefox 8 because I did install kernel EX. And for Flash Player, I do have Adobe Flash Player 9. I do have Office XP, unfortunately, because it does not support Office 03, unlike Windows 2000. And I did download 7-Zip, however, as you can see. Unfortunately, 7-Zip does not work for some reason. And I also installed VLC Media Player, so why not? I'm going to check in Firefox and maybe go on google.com again. Unfortunately, Windows ME did have a bad reputation for stability because it was just 1 year before Windows XP was released, but Windows XP was much more modern and had a much better UI. Windows ME is basically forgotten. And why not, let's shut down Windows ME and try out Windows XP. Basically Windows Experience, a much more modern OS. I was actually born around the time Windows XP was released, so basically it is quite old, as I'm actually in my 20s now. But in reality, there's some places and facilities which still use Windows XP to this day. The MBTA, for example, still uses Windows XP embedded. And over here is XP. I'm actually gonna figure out what the screen issue. Okay, here it is. WinXP here. I did install more modern programs Actually installed a much later version of Firefox, similar to Server 03, Server 08, as well as Windows Vista. I did install similar version of Firefox on these. As you can see over here, I'm actually going to put in exclusive modes. Basically a much more modern version of Firefox, which still works on YouTube as well as modern sites. This is actually Media Player 11 over here. Unfortunately in Server 03, because I cannot validate the product key, therefore only Media Player 10 was installed, unfortunately. But as you can see, this is a much more modern version of Media Player. I did manage to upgrade to IE8 over here. And basically, I installed VMware tools, and of course XP does come with a Sound Blaster, just like Windows 2000 ME. And unlike 98 and stuff, which does not include a Sound Blaster, so you have to install one manually. And I did not install Adobe Flash because I could not really find a supported version, and plus Adobe Flash has been dead for like 4 years already, so I would not install. But I installed Office 2010, which is a lot more modern than previous versions of Office I showed you guys. And I installed VLC as well as Java. Unfortunately, Java did not work on XP or Vista based OSs, so I did not install, or even Windows 8 for some reason. I just don't understand why. But over here, I'm actually going to show you guys YouTube. Specifically my own videos, to show you guys YouTube does sort of work, albeit not really good. This is actually my recent unboxing of the Vision Pro. I know it's extremely slow, and I do really love the CX90, although I do think the CX90 is so big for me.
Somebody's trying to hack your website right now. You gotta make sure.
Hello everybody, this is the iFan channel here, and I finally got...
Unfortunately, YouTube is quite slow because this is actually a virtual machine and it is XP. I actually do have a Windows XP physical machine like an hour away from my apartment. I actually do have another house an hour away, which does include Windows XP, and I did test it. And unfortunately, YouTube is also bad on that XP as well. And here is Server 03, which is actually based on XP. It is quite similar. And there is actually a 64-bit version of Windows XP, which is actually based on Server 03. I'm just waiting for this thing to start up first, and then I'm actually going to show you guys around some of the embellishments I added in. Control Alt Delete. Even this did have a Sound Blaster, yes. A Windows server. Albeit I did enable it using services, and for Media Player, even though 08 and 08R2 did not include Media Player straight out of the box, you do have to actually like go into Server Manager and then add in Media Player and stuff. And ironically, for some of the earlier Windows servers, unlike like say XP, Vista and 7, it did come with the classic theme over here. Basically kind of like Windows 9X, Windows 2000 and some of the older Windows NT based operating systems. But it did install VMware tools, as you can see, and it did enable the Sound Blaster using services. I installed IE8, I believe so. As you can see, this is actually IE8, and a version of Firefox I did add in this server. It's about the same as in Windows XP and Windows Vista. I did not install Flash, but I did install Office 2010 over here, and also downloaded 7-zip as well, the latest version, as well as Windows Media Player. Although I only got to download Windows Media Player 10 and this server did include Media Player 10 straight out of the box, so I don't not really download Media Player, unfortunately, but I did download VLC Media Player. So what I'm actually going to go in Firefox for bits and show you guys some YouTube there. Yeah, it does work, albeit, as you guys all know, this is really slow. But I think I might just watch another video, why not? And this is actually my Ho Chi Minh City vlog. I did go to Ho Chi Minh City 2 months ago, yeah, to meet my family for one day and
Hello
to
everybody, this
tour
is
around
channel here, and
the next day.
It's quite a sunny day, and I woke up at around 6:20, despite the fact I slept.
Unfortunately, I'm actually going to shut down and go on to Vista, yeah. As you can see, there's actually startup sounds and shutdown sound. I did manually enable it, just like with every single Windows Server edition I installed, because for some reason Windows Server did not include sound, and you actually do have to enable it using services for some reason. Over here is Windows Vista. Basically an OS criticized for all the driver issues as well as compatibility issues, but in reality after Service Pack 2, Windows Vista really started to stabilize, kind of like XP. Even though many people love XP, in fact XP did have issues until about Service Pack 2 or something. Ironically, I don't know why there's really no internet, but I did install the same version of Firefox as in XP, because that's the latest version of Firefox which could be supported though. And IE9, I also installed IE9 as well. I also installed VMware tools, and I installed Office 2010. Because that was the latest version of Office Vista could support. I also installed 7-zip as well as VLC Media Player, because Windows Vista could not support Media Player 12 but came with Windows Media Player 11. I did not install Java, however, because the Java installer did fail on Vista just like it did on Windows 8 for some reason. And unfortunately the Internet Explorer cannot connect, but as you can see, this is actually the new icon, so this is definitely IE9 for sure. And right now I'm actually going to go on YouTube. And over here is Hanoi.
Here's some more people discussing about the war and stuff, the situation, the war, and as you can see,
ironically, the beginning of the video is actually in Ho Chi Minh. This is actually the Ho Chi Minh Campaign Museum in Ho Chi Minh City. Ironically, even though much of the video is about Hanoi, and basically, as you can see, a new UI. I'm actually going to shut down and start out server 08. Why not? And over here is the Vista Ultimate. Basically a step lower from Enterprise, but in reality really nobody uses Enterprise at all except maybe businesses and stuff. And here it is, server 08 here. Essentially Windows Vista server. it basically included all the same apps except the fact I could not actually download IE 9 because it did require updates, but the updates are not like quote unquote applicable to the server 08 machine for some reason. I just don't know how, so I'm stuck with IE 8. But here you go, basically all the same applications and stuff. And if you were to go on YouTube, basically YouTube does load. And over here I'm actually going to show you guys my Rome video. Yeah, just for some diversity, because I did go to Rome about 2 months ago as well.
Hello everybody.
I just don't know how it's not stable, but it did enable sound on server 08.
First is the second king of Italy. And over here is Chapel St. Joseph of the Holy Land.
I did try to do the same thing as Vista, but unfortunately sound is not really stable. And here you go. Basically, this is the very last Windows Server Edition to not require password from me. And over here is Windows 7. Basically, ever since Windows 7, I basically downloaded Edge and stuff. Yes, VMware tools, and it did come with a Sound Blaster, just like every version of Windows since Windows 2000. Instead of downloading Firefox, I actually installed Chrome, basically the latest version of Chrome, which is supported on the respective OSs. And I also installed Office 2016, albeit on Windows 10 and Windows 11. I actually downloaded Office 365 instead. And I do have WinRAR on every version of Windows since Windows 7, because 7 zip is quite antiquated and supports Windows 2000 even on its latest version. I'm not joking. And I also downloaded Java on every version since Windows 7, but except for Windows 8 and the latest version of VLC Media Player. And over here is Chrome. As you can see, I'm actually going to put on exclusive mode here. Oh jeez. I did have to blur this out though, unfortunately. Dubai.
Hello everybody, this is the iPhone.
This was actually at Neubai Airport.
Wendy's, Domino's, Pizza Hut.
I basically kind of remember the fact there are a lot of American chains in Dubai, but in reality, like the UAE and the Arab countries, basically the GCC countries, are definitely not the most Americanized countries, even though they do have some American features. But in fact, I did include some Bach as well, just like on previous versions of Windows. And you do have games here. As you can see, this is actually Edge, and this is the very latest version of IE. Basically, as you guys all know, IE 11 did stop receiving support around 2 years ago. So basically, I'm actually going to shut down. And this is so much nicer than that of previous Windows operating systems. And this is Server 08 R2, which ironically does require passwords. As you can see, basically all the same apps as Windows 7. And over here is Chrome as well. I shouldn't have done this. I'm probably going to edit the video and blur everything out for privacy reasons. And over here is my car parody, yes. Basically, last summer I was in Berlin. I did drive the Citroen C4 from Berlin all the way to Leipzig and then Dresden and back to Berlin again, and then review the car before actually returning it.
We ran a promotion cutting the price of Mint Unlimited in half, and it was so.
Hello everybody, this is the iFan channel. Because several times I was not holding the steering wheel and I was only holding it one. The good thing is the sound on this Windows server is so much better than that of the previous server for some reason. I'm actually going to shut down. And this is the very last Windows server where you do have to add a comment. And ironically, server 08R2 does not include the Windows 7 boot screen. Instead, it includes the same boot screen as that of Vista. And here's Windows 8. Ironically, I did not get to install IE11 or Java. In fact, IE11 does not support Windows 8. Only IE10 does, and Windows 8 did get out of support. But I'm actually going to put in exclusive mode, why not? And over here is Windows 8 here. Yeah, without a start button. And many people did criticize it. So much in fact that Windows 8.1 actually included a start button. This video is quite boring, in fact. It's just basically me getting home from Europe. See, this is what the plane looks like. From Keflavik to Boston is even long. But I did go to the Czech Republic the second year in a row. In fact, this is actually my like 5th or 10th time in like Prague or something. This supper, burger, fries. Okay guys, I'm now on the streetcar on the way. Unfortunately, I did have laryngitis throughout much of the Europe trip, so I did not really get to enjoy. And unfortunately, I do have to go on settings to shut down, so therefore Windows 8 is not really intuitive, and many people did criticize Windows 8 for its like strange UI, essentially. And here is server 2012. I'm actually going to start this thing, put it on exclusive mode once again, and here it is. Actually, Control Alt Delete here. Okay, here it is, exclusive mode, and yeah, basically based on Windows 8, unfortunately. So therefore the UI is not so damn intuitive for PC users. But why not? I'm actually gonna try out Windows Server 2012. Yeah, based on Windows 8. To prove audio works, I'm actually going to watch this Salzburg vlog, yeah. Hello everybody. Quite big, by the way. Too, and he first learned how to VMware, which is a landmark in Salzburg. And right now I'm actually going to settings and then shut down the OS. Fortunately, you do not have to add a comment every time you shut down, unlike with the previous Windows servers. And this is actually Windows 8.1, which did have a lot of bug fixes from Windows 8. And fortunately, I did manage to download Java. Unlike in Windows 8, I just don't know why this is not even in full screen there. Yeah. Okay. Basically, it does have the latest version of Internet Explorer, IE 11. I also downloaded Edge, similar to Windows 8 as well. And here is Chrome. To prove audio works, I'm actually going to watch my Munich vlog. Yeah.
Hello everybody,
I just don't understand how the Munich vlog has very few views there
was built during the late 40s.
compared with the other videos.
And
But over here is actually my die-cast, the E90.
because not only bigger cars are more expensive,
And over here I'm actually going to shut down. Fortunately, you do not have to scroll to the search, which could be cumbersome and unintuitive. It sometimes does not really work well. It basically works around maybe 90% of the time, 80% of the time. But over here I'm actually going to shut down Windows 8.1 and go to server 2012 R2. Yes, basically there's an R2 version of 2012 based on, of course, Windows 8.1. Does take a while, so when I'm actually going to shut down. And here it is, some of the last OSs. And fortunately, I did download 3 of these Windows editions on VMware. So instead of actually downloading them on VirtualBox, I actually deleted the VirtualBox, upgraded to VMware Workstation 17, which is actually the latest version, and actually reinstalled these on VMware. And I also reinstalled Windows 10 as well. And let me explain to you guys why I reinstalled Windows 10. After finding out that the Windows 10 I actually installed was actually a pre-installed Windows 10, meaning there are basically no like setup modes where you set up an account and instead you jump straight into the administrator. Therefore, I did disqualify it because it basically included some of the apps I did not need, like Notepad++ and stuff. In fact, I never really knew. I could have just downloaded a Windows 10 image from the Microsoft website at the time, but in fact, I actually did download all of these ISOs 2 years ago. So I did not really know I even have a pre-installed Windows 10 until like I set it up. So basically, I'm actually going to redo a Windows 10 setup. I'm actually going to show you guys in the Windows 10 setup and put a disclaimer. Unfortunately, these servers are all in like evaluation mode, which is actually a free trial. So there's a chance these might expire, but in reality I'm actually going to put all of these virtual machines in an external hard drive because this computer really only has around 1 terabyte of storage and my external hard drive has 5 terabytes. So when I'm actually going to add all of these virtual machines inside of the external hard drive and actually going to install the beta version of Windows on the next video.
hello everybody, big, even meters tall. I just arrived near the Fisherman's Bastion, and as you can see, this
and for some of the last OSs, here is actually Windows 10. Basically, ever since Windows 10, I do have the latest version of everything, except for the Windows servers, of which I did have Office 2016 rather than Office 365. Okay guys, I'm actually going to browse in exclusive mode now, and over here is Windows 10. It does take a while to put in welcome, but I actually set up this Windows 10 myself. I actually found this ISO on the Windows webpage, yes. Except, oh on previous ISO. Actually got it from a third party. Nope, not this time. I'm not getting anything from a third party if it's current version Windows, because Microsoft does still offer an ISO for these. And unfortunately Windows 11 is not activated. However, it's still quite okay, because for like the previous versions of Windows, like say XP and stuff and Vista, not activating does affect the usability. But with Windows 10 and Windows 11, there's no grace period, and therefore you could actually use Windows 10 and Windows 11 even without activating. However, the only difference is you cannot really personalize. And as you can see, it does include all the modern versions, even of Edge as well, which is included. And I do believe this is actually newer build up Windows 10. I'm actually gonna check now. Control panel. Oh jeez, it's so slow there. I think this only has 2 gigs of RAM. And 2 gigs of RAM is quite unacceptable for this day. It was acceptable during the XP times, and it's considered powerful, but it is so weak today. And here is my Zagreb vlog here. Unfortunately, there's an ad.
So you think you know Wix, but do you really? First up, we've got Shake.
Hello, everyone.
Basically, Croatia did join the Schengen area and the Eurozone about last year.
This is a minor. It was built during the late night.
Oh jeez, it took so long for settings to load. Basically, all these embellishments were done during my free time, and therefore did take 5 days, because I do some programming projects as well as some tech projects, and therefore this is basically during my spare time. And I do believe this is actually a more recent version of Windows 10 over here. I'm actually gonna shut down. In fact, Windows 10 could actually support PCs from the mid-2000s. Actually do have a Dell Optiplex 755, of which I actually downloaded Windows 10, and it worked just fine, albeit quite slow. It is quite impressive. Macs at the same time are actually basically outdated and essentially just tossable. But you could actually install Windows 10 on these older Macs and still make use of some of the older Macs, because older Macs actually do have good hardware. It is only let down because of lack of support. But over here is Windows Server 2016 and 2019, and over here is 2022. Unfortunately, Server 2016 and 2019 do not come with Edge. In fact, they actually come with Internet Explorer, despite the fact they're actually based on different versions of Windows 10. Basically, Server 2016 is actually based on Windows 10 1607, which is actually an older version of Windows 10. Yeah, one of the very first builds of Windows 10, basically about a year after Windows 10 was released in 2015. And here it is, Server 2016, with the Server Manager. And it did include Internet Explorer 11. It's quite ironic, because it is actually a Windows 10 based OS, but it only includes IE, yes, instead of Edge. And to prove there is actually audio, I'm actually going to watch some of my videos. This time on Ljubljana. Yes, Ljubljana, which is the capital of Slovenia. In fact, this summer I'm actually planning to go to Bled in Slovenia, which is actually a lot more scenic than the already scenic Ljubljana in Slovenia.
Hello, everyone. The Ljubljana capital.
The
Unfortunately, the sound is quite buzzy. That was because I did not really modify the sound on like server 2016, server 2019, and server 2022, as well as Windows 11. And if I were to modify the sound on Windows 11, it would actually even get more buzzy. Yes, ironically. So I basically leave it as is, and I'm actually shutting down. It is really slow. But over here is server 2019. 3 of the last operating system, as I promised, and then I'll actually see you guys soon. This is actually based on Windows 10 1809, which was actually slightly later build of Windows 10, albeit still quite old, as you can see with the UI. Basically with the older Windows 10 background. And this is also standard evaluation as well, and it also includes IE. With basically all the same apps as with the other later versions of Windows. And why not? I'm actually going to watch the Venice vlog. Yes.
Hello everybody. Amazing. As you can see, Venice is one of them with the count of 10 in all of Europe.
Ironically, the audio is actually much better on this than in server 2016 for some reason. So why not? I'm actually going to shut down, actually go to the very last 2 versions of Windows. And ironically, server 2022 is not based on Windows 11. It was actually released in 2021, yes. And it's based on Windows 10. Yes, I later built a Windows 10, ironically, and not Windows 11. So these are the 2 post-2020 Windows OSs here. Finally, the 2 very last versions. Control-Alt-Delete, and exclusive modes. Yes. And it did have a Windows 10 background, unlike with previous servers where it did have the older UI, like the classic UI. And it did include Edge this time, finally, because IE basically is totally outdated. Nobody uses IE anymore, really. Basically, IE ever since IE6 was heavily criticized.
Hello everybody, this is the iFan channel. Here's it to my hotel. Guys, quite striking and beautiful
in Milan. And why not? I'm actually going to shut down. And here is the finale. Windows 11. Windows 11. I'm not joking. The very OS that I'm currently using on this machine whilst I'm recording now. Windows 11. Yes. The very latest Windows OS. As you can see, this is Windows 11 here, with the new Windows logo. Logging on to Windows here, and exclusive modes. It basically feels like using my PC. And this is actually the only VM to have more than 2 gigs of RAM. In fact, this Windows 11 actually does have 6 gigs of RAM. Yes, 6 gigs of RAM. And it basically feels like using my own computer, sort of. Yeah, really does. In fact, just browsing around, you can actually see the latest version of Chrome and stuff. VMware tools, as well as YouTube. And you can see what I mean. Basically really modern here. Let's watch the iFan channel, which is my own channel, on Switzerland. Yes, Switzerland.
I am here to tell you today that your feelings are valid. Your trauma is valid. Your hurt is your hurt. I discovered.
Hello everybody. 2008. This to this day, and it is around 120.
Basically, in several more months, I'm actually going to add in Windows Server 2025. Why not? And I'm actually going to shut down. Thank you guys for watching. Please give a big thumbs up, subscribe for more videos. I'm actually going to see you guys later, and let me show you guys Windows 11. Here it is. I'm actually going to see you guys soon.